Welcome, everyone. It is Monday morning, the day after the NFL Scouting Combine is in the books. I have returned from Indianapolis, and we're going to talk all about it on our Monday morning Monday morning General Manager show. This today, probably one of the biggest days of the entire calendar year for general managers. They've got a lot of information to sort through as they return to their hometowns from Indianapolis and sort through, my gosh, the volume of information on these hundreds of prospects who just completed the combine must be daunting in a way to make sense of it all. How do you prioritize it all? How do you boil it down to what's important? And that's what we're going to talk about today. What is important at the NFL Scouting Combine? If you're a general manager, if you're a team trying to parse through the information you've just gathered on all these prospects, what do you weigh heavily and what maybe not as much? What can you discard? We're going to talk about that on today's show. But let's just talk in general about the combine experience, because it's a scene, man. It's a scene. I enjoy it, but I'm older. I'm in my 50s. So I don't get caught up really I'm not starstruck. I'm not there to be seen. I'm not there for the hangout at High Velocity, which is the big bar at the Marriott, where if you go there on a Thursday or a Friday night, it's a who's who in the football world. I'm too old for that stuff, man. It's a long day. You grind through a day where you wake up really early and you go to all the interviews, you go to the media room to write articles about the interviews, then you go to Lucas Oil Stadium. The workouts last forever, 5 hours for most of the position groups, 7 hours when the quarterbacks and running backs and receivers are out there. And then you go back to the hotel and you crank out more articles. And all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock at night and you've been going for 14 hours straight. And you're exhausted. The last thing I want to do, the last thing my 50-something-year-old butt wants to do is go people watch or go, look for stars at a bar at that point. I call my wife. I talk to my kids. I go to sleep. I'm old, man. What the hell? I'm old. But that's not the point. But we will talk about that a little bit. All right, takeaways. What are some big takeaways? Well, one, the combine is the only time where the whole football world is assembled in one place at the same time. It's not like that at the Super Bowl. It's not like that on any given weekend. It's not like that at the draft. At the draft, all these teams are in their own individual draft rooms. But at the combine, everyone's in Indianapolis. The general managers, the head coaches, the scouts. It used to be all the assistants were there as well. The assistants aren't there as much anymore. But media people, obviously all the prospects, tons of ex-players. Indianapolis has quickly become a destination for ex-NFL players who are there on media assignments or working for teams or just, I guess, want to be seen. Again, the bar at the Marriott, High Velocity, which is the hangout at night. If you go there on a Friday night, you're going to see a ton of ex-players. A lot of former Colts, obviously. Reggie Wayne is there. Guys like Cam Jordan, Ike Taylor from the Steelers. There's a bunch of guys that you'll see, here hanging out, talking, surrounded by hordes of people, as you can imagine. The whole NFL world is there. The NFL granted 1,600 media credentials to the combine this year. 1,600. It's a lot of credentials. And you know what I really noticed? It's an overwhelmingly young crowd at the combine because so many colleges send their own media teams there to cover their guys. I met a group of kids, and I call them kids because they are, man. They're in their early 20s. I met a group of kids there from Penn State who were covering all the Penn State prospects, a couple people from Clemson who were there. A couple of people from North Carolina. There weren't many North Carolina. I think there might have only been one or two North Carolina prospects there. And I asked him about Belichick and how everything went. And the one guy, he just shook his head. That was his reaction. He just shook his head. So I don't know how to take that exactly. But yeah, so many of these colleges have their own contingencies covering their guys. It is a young person's game in that regard. And it's female. I mean, the number of young women there covering the event was striking. I mean, there's a huge female journalism contingency at the NFL Scouting Combine. There's also journalists who are grizzled veterans. It's funny to watch them work. You can see the younger people because they're a lot more starstruck versus the so-called veterans who are just grinding away. They know exactly what they want to do, who they want to target. Doug Farrar, who was on my show a couple of weeks ago, veteran journalist from Sports Illustrated, Washington Post, Athlon Sports, etc. Got to talk to him for a little bit, but man, he was targeted. That guy was on a mission. Doug was on a mission. He knew exactly who he wanted to talk to. He was writing features on certain guys. Cole Payton, the quarterback from North Dakota State, he was locked in on him, and he was writing a feature on him, so he spent a lot of time with him. It's business, man. Like if you're a professional, this is an amazing business opportunity. So they're locked in. It's also a place where you have to try to separate the people who really know what's going on, people who have legitimate intel versus those who are trafficking BS. I wrote a line in something I posted on Twitter that said, if bullshit were currency, the combine is a place where you could get rich. Because there's a lot of people who want to sound like they're in the know. They want to sound like they've got intel. Because this is really the beginning of the new league year. Now, technically, the new league year doesn't start until I think it's March 11th. So, a little less than 2 weeks. But this is really the beginning of the new league year, and teams are now making decisions about franchise tags and free agents and trades. Anthony Richardson getting granted permission to seek a trade. That was big news. AJ Brown rumors, Max Crosby rumors. There's a lot of rumors at the combine. And you can't fall into the trap as a media person of just repeating everything that you hear, because so much of it is just not going to come to fruition. There's a lot of people who want to sound like they know, who want to be like, hey, I talked to this scout, I talked to this personnel person, etc. And I talked to some of them as well, right? And there are some things that I feel are worthy enough to repeat, come from legitimate enough sources to repeat. But much of it is just speculation. But the number of people talking in certainty, as though they know, is fascinating. People want to sound important. I think that's human nature in many regards. And this is a place where you're surrounded by people who do know. And so you get this whisper down the lane effect. Somebody who knows something mentions something to somebody else, something that could happen. Hey, such and such, is on the trade block. And then that trickles all the way down. And before you know it, that's a certainty. That Max Crosby's getting traded. Trust me, I heard it from a well-planted source. If bullshit were currency, you could get rich at the NFL Scouting Combine. Now, what matters? If you're a general manager, what are you really looking for? What matters there? One thing in talking to enough people, you start to hear the same thing enough times. And you begin to say, okay, well, I think there's a solid foundation of fact here. And one thing that is being repeated almost universally throughout Indianapolis is the following. The interviews matter more than the field workouts. The field workouts exist as confirmation of things that scouts and GMs and personnel people and coaches have already seen on film. hey, this guy plays fast. Does he time fast? On the board over my shoulder, most of you are listening to this, not watching. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see on the board over my shoulder, I've written, stop obsessing on 40 times. Yes, the 40 times matter, but they matter as backup more so than as primary information. If I were a historian writing a book, 40 times are not original sources. The original sources are the film. 40 times are like the secondary sources. Do they confirm what my eyes have already seen? If a guy tests really fast, it's probably just going to back up the fact that he plays fast. Now, that's not universally true, and the opposite can be true. For example, Ohio State wide receiver Carnell Tate, who is widely projected as a top 10 pick in this draft, ran slow by comparison. And by slow, I mean 4.5. It's a crazy world where 4.5 is slow in the 40-yard dash. It used to be that 4.4 was a burning time. Well, guess what? 4.3 is the new 4.4. The number of guys running 4.3 now, it's just a commonplace time. You see 4.37 and you go, oh yeah, 4.37. You see 4.46 and you go, okay, that's good. That used to blow you away. 4.4, anything sub 4.5, man, used to really go, wow. Now just about everybody is sub 4.5. So when Carnell Tate ran 4.54, there was like an audible gasp throughout Lucas Oil Stadium. He went over 4.5. Never mind that he's arguably the best route runner in the draft, that he has elite hands, that he's 6'3", that he's got a vertical leap of about 40 inches, that his film is arguably the best in the entire wide receiver class. But no, he ran a tenth of a second slower in the 40 than a lot of these other receivers. So now he's tumbling down draft boards. Somebody wrote, I wouldn't touch Carnell Tate in the top 20. Well, guess what? You're not going to be an NFL personnel person because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. If you don't think Carnell Tate is a top 20 player in this draft, you don't know football. So, right, that's not necessarily the thing where GMs are putting the greatest amount of stock. But the interviews, what's interesting about the interviews is this. They open a window into players that you're not afforded otherwise. Again, the field work confirms the game tape, or it gives you a little more insight into somebody who you may have some questions about. Hey, man, I like this quarterback, but I really want to see his mechanics up close because I'm not sure if, he's got this little hitch, and can we coach that out of him? Can we teach him to get the ball out a little bit faster? I want to see him go through his workout to see if that's something I think is fixable. Like, that's important information. But for the most part, it's the interviews where the GMs put their stock because, again, they open a window into this guy that we don't ordinarily understand. Does he know his craft? Is he a big film watcher? What's his family life like? His background? Is this a guy who's conquered adversity in his life? When things get hard, when he's struggling as a rookie and everybody's bashing him on social media, how's he going to respond? These are all things that you can get a feel for when you sit down with somebody. What's important to him off the field? I mean, there were some guys who just were so impressive in their interviews. Elijah Surratt, the wide receiver from Indiana, I thought was phenomenal. He reminded me of when I saw Emeka Egbuka last year. Emeka Egbuka last year, it felt like I was talking to a coach. I mean, he just went on and on about his craft. It felt like he could stay there all day. He was in his element talking football. And obviously he was a heck of a wide receiver too, but the interview made you more confident in him. And he went out and he had a great rookie year. I felt the same talking to Elijah Surratt. I don't think he's on Emeka Egbuka's level as a wide receiver. He's a different body too. He's a bigger wide receiver, but he's a guy who I would feel very confident in drafting because I think that his mental approach to the game makes him well prepared to become a professional and handle what all that entails. Another guy, Logan Jones, a center from Iowa, really interesting. He's arguably the top center in this draft, but he came to Iowa. He was recruited to Iowa as a defensive tackle. And he spoke at length about converting him to a center and really how difficult that transition was. But he made it quickly and seamlessly. He wound up a 4-year starter. So this is a guy recruited as a defensive tackle who steps in as a freshman, takes Tyler Linderbaum. Linderbaum goes to the pros. He replaces a legend at Iowa in Linderbaum and is a 4-year starter and talked so seamlessly about that transition, how he did it, his mental approach to the game, his craft. I mean, I could have listened to him talk about, his hands and his feet, or about how he sees protections all day long. It would have been great to just sit there and listen and just talk shop with this guy. And I thought to myself, oh, this is why he's a team captain. This is why he's a great leader. Somebody asked him a question about what's the most important job of a center? And he said the most important job of a center is to get everybody else on the same page, to get everybody else comfortable. Didn't even talk about himself. Talked about his responsibility as it pertains to the rest of the line. That's a guy you want on your football team. And again, obviously he's got great film. If these guys don't have great film, none of it really matters. Another guy, Casey Concepcion, Texas A&M wide receiver, projected as a late first round, early second round draft pick. Speaking at the combine, you could tell initially right away, I didn't know if it was nerves or if this was a speech issue for him, but he had a stutter and he had a tough time getting his words out. And it was a little bit uncomfortable because at first I felt for him. I was like, oh man, he's really struggling here. And I didn't know that he has and has had his entire life an issue with stuttering. But as the interview went on, I thought to myself, man, give this kid an A+ for the courage to stand here and go through this whole process. He didn't try to rush out of there. He didn't seem embarrassed. He didn't panic. There were times where he literally had to go 6-7 seconds before he could get a word out. And the media, to their credit, handled it very well. Nobody was awkward about it. But I thought to myself, that's courage to stand up here and face the national media and go through this deliberately and answer every single question. I mean, he was one of the guys that was up there the longest. It really made me say, I love the character of that young man. I would trust that guy on our football team. He's handled adversity. He's been through some stuff. You know how badly, I was a high school teacher for 30 years. You know how badly kids with a stutter get made fun of? They get picked on mercilessly, particularly when they're younger. So Casey Concepcion has been through some stuff. And he then went out and killed it on the field. His on-field workout was great. And I thought to myself, that's a guy you can trust. On the other side, the interview that's getting all the attention is Makai Lemon of USC, the wide receiver, who I got to admit, I was there for his interview. It was weird. I mean, he didn't make eye contact with most of the members of the media. He kind of was like looking out over their heads. His answers were short. His body language, he just seemed disinterested. It didn't strike you as someone who realized that they were in the midst of a job interview and that rightly or wrongly, they were going to be critiqued on not only the way they answered questions, on the answers themselves, but the way that they answered them, on their demeanor. It almost felt arrogant and flippant. And then you read, and again, this is where the rumor mill comes in. I don't know if this is confirmed or not, that he bombed the interviews with teams and that several teams took him off their boards. I can't confirm that as fact, but if it went down like that, I could see it because it felt like that in front of the media. Will that affect his draft stock? Lemon is a guy that could be a top 10, top 12 pick in this draft. Arguably has the best ball tracking skills and best hands of anyone in the draft. Shifty slot receiver. Will teams hold it against him that maybe his interview was not on par with some of the others. The interviews matter. And that's really the biggest takeaway. What do you get? What do you learn from these guys when you get them one-on-one and you sit down and you talk to them? Who are they as people? What's important to them? What do they value? How do they handle adversity? Do they know their craft? It was fascinating talking to some of the offensive linemen. Massive Alabama offensive tackle, Caden Proctor, 6'7", 355 pounds. That's a big human being. They asked, somebody asked him, have you talked to the Lions? And he laughed. And he said, oh yeah, I've talked to the Lions. He said, Dan Campbell, we had me on the whiteboard drawing up schemes and we were walking through stuff. I can just picture Dan Campbell like blocking Caden or having Caden Proctor block him, scheming it up on the whiteboard. What would an interview with Dan Campbell be like? It's got to be like exactly what you think it is, right? Manic, intense. So, the way that teams go about this process, of course, varies by team, by personality, et cetera. But this is where to put your stock. The interviews matter. The field work, yeah, of course, it matters too. And the numbers being put up are mind-boggling. Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq, 242 pounds, ran a 4.39 40. A 242-pound tight end going sub 4.4 in the 40. If that doesn't open your eyes, what will? Ohio State safety Lorenzo Styles, 4.28 or 4.27 in the 40. His brother Sonny Styles, an absurd 43.5-inch vertical leap at 230 some pounds. These guys are freakishly athletic, and it's so impressive to watch live. But that's not where you really should put the most stock. It's who are they as people? Do you think you can trust them? Because you're drafting guys who are going to, in large part, determine your own future. Can I put my career on the line with this guy? You need to get to know him to have an answer for that. All right, fascinating time in Indianapolis. We'll talk more about it on Wednesday. I'll get into the players a little bit more on Wednesday. We'll get into some of perhaps the off-field movement, and we'll sort through the rumor mill a little bit, right? Now the dust will start to settle, and by Wednesday, maybe we'll have a little bit better of an idea of if some of the rumors that are being kicked about in Indy are coming to fruition. And then Friday, I've reached out to a lot of people that I met at the Combine, and including some players. We'll see if anybody we can line anybody up for Friday. So it's going to be an exciting week here at the Call Sheet. Hope you stay with me. Until then, have a great Monday, everybody. Take care.